Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Guppert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking to Ora Goldman, founder and CEO at Mekorma, to learn more about the company's 30 years in business, their focus on accounts payable, and their focus on empathy and client care over that time. Mekorma is the sponsor of this episode, and Ora tells us about the company's origins from early trade shows with her kids in tow to gaining perspective on the AP needs of finance professionals at a time when technology demands were much different. The company's product evolution has been focused on understanding real pain points of customers, Ora explains, and she shares some examples and stories about client experiences. We also discuss some of the company's own experiences as an ISV in the Microsoft ecosystem, first working with Great Plains and Dynamics GP, and through to today as they have modernized their offerings and expanded to Dynamics 365 Business Central. We also learn more about Ora's outlook on the Dynamics community and how Ora and her team have worked to foster relationships and partnerships. All right, I'm here with Ora Goldman of Mekorma. Ora, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I'm really looking forward to getting into this conversation. Can you give a bit of an introduction for our listeners about who you are and what you do?
All right. Well, both who as individual and as a company. So my name is Ora, and I founded Mekorma, which has been a player in the AP automation space since 1995. And basically, we started out with microchecks, and it went on to other ways of automating AP payments to make things really streamlined for the AP team. And my background is in software development. And over the last almost 30, well, I guess it is over 30 years, I've learned to do everything. But my current role is to support the team in doing all the different things that we do across the company.
All right, excellent. And yeah, I've had the chance to meet and talk with various members of the team, and we've chatted before, but I don't think we've really ever sat down for a conversation like this, so it's great. I think one of the things in planning for today's conversation was, sort of discussing more of what Mekorma is all about, and the theme of empathy came up in relation to AP automation, which is a really interesting perspective. Can you explain how empathy and I guess innovation too fits into your vision for the company?
Empathy and innovation. Well, it started all the way back. Back in the day, the tagline for Mekorma was balancing business with life. And I think that was meant in a very broad way, not only for ourselves as a team, but also for our customers. The idea is in many ways to relieve the tedium of things that the system can do for you and allow you as people to get that time back and hopefully spend some of it to do strategic things in the company and spend some of it to take better self-care and time off and stuff like that. So I think as a company, we've always been focused on what we call balancing business and life. What we currently say is ease, control, and care. So we try to make it easy. We put a lot of work. Our innovation is poured into our products in order to make it easy for our customers. So we put in a lot of work so that they don't have to. And control, of course, when you're talking about payments, you need to make sure you're protected from fraud. You know how to set up your rules so that things go out exactly the way you want. You can control your cash flow. So we're always thinking about what types of control that our customers request and getting it into the product. And then care is underlying everything that we do. So we do actually care about our customers and their daily life.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I think of empathy in relation to, finance and financial management themes, I tend to think of the end user more than anybody because that's where I kind of think of the most sort of immediate potential for pain or for frustration. And then I guess I don't think of empathy as much at the sort of the management level. I think of inefficiency. I think of, opportunities to improve metrics and things like that. But empathy for me, it kind of goes to the end user level first. How do you see that?
Well, I've seen it in different ways. So I'll start with an end user example for sure, because it's the one that tweaked my heart the most. I was at a conference talking to one of our users, and I learned that her whole job was selecting batches to be paid. She did that 40 hours per week. Now, obviously, it was a pretty big company to be doing that many payments all week long. But when I thought about what the system was making her do, that really inspired one of our products where you can click one button and it'll create them all for you, and I just thought that was like a very tedious job that I couldn't imagine a human being having to do. Now, on a management level, I mean, we've had a controller come in to one of our clients and call us up saying, hey, this doesn't make any sense. This has to be modernized. That's what they cared about. And I think that the fact that we could modernize it for them, and now their job was easier because of it. So I think it can go up. It doesn't have to be like a specialist level, but even managers and controllers, and maybe even touching on the CFO, but mainly on the manager and controller level, can definitely feel the impact of having the systems be super smooth and easy to control.
Yeah, those are great stories. And I mean, I hope we can, get into some more. I think it's great to sort of hear what your team hears from your customers over all these years, right? And I do want to talk about, speaking of time, sort of the company's journey through the Dynamics ecosystem. I think it's been an interesting one. I know it's continuing to sort of evolve. Can you take us sort of a little bit more on that journey, sort of where you've operated in the Microsoft ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started out, it was a solopreneur custom development for Dynamics when it first came out, Great Plains Software, and then coming out with some, let's call it, products that everyone could use, mainly the Micro checks, about in 1995. Showing up to trade shows with my kids in tow when they were babies. And I remember Doug Burgum having us up on the stage with my little kids. Actually, just one of them. Anyway, it was charming, but it was back in the 90s. But as things went on, we started adding elements to the software to broaden it for the AP and to modernize it. And when we invested as a company in a course called AP Basics from, I'll recommend, an association called the Institute of Financial Management, IOFM, and they teach specifically for AP professionals. So we had an instructor come in and teach every single person at Mekorma an 8-week course so that we could understand what our customers needed. And from there, we started developing more modules in our software. So that was over the last few years, and then bring it into Business Central. So that's been the most interesting move, to go from Dynamics GP into the Business Central market and be there to support our customers.
That's really interesting. It makes total sense that you would get educated in an environment like that, but I don't know that I've actually ever heard anyone say that they sent their team as a software vendor to like a training class for an association like that to kind of almost, it sounds like, learn requirements and understand the requirements better and sort of what the needs are of the kind of user personas for your customers. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was important to me. I felt like all of us needed to understand a little bit more about our customers. Now, I don't expect somebody who's doing a completely unrelated job to necessarily retain information like exactly what every niche little thing is, like a sheetment or different concepts that we learned. But to understand what our customers deal with day to day and just who they are as people, I wanted every single person to understand that. I felt like it would help us work together better for what we're doing.
In that journey, you mentioned it, but I'd like to learn a little more. I used to think of Mekorma as really a very, well-established Dynamics GP vendor who understood that market really well, had obviously been there for many years. You mentioned Great Plains, which is sort of the predecessor to GP, and now making that transition fully, I would say, to Business Central at this point. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of the period of time, kind of when that transition was made?
Well, it's very interesting because there's really two transitions being made at the same time. One of them is that, we've been primarily known for check printing, but as I said, we've been adding a lot of different features to help make payments easier, including remote payments over the last few years. And so one transition is that, there is a big surge to remote payments because we have people wanting to work more mobilely as well as get away from the paper. So at the same time, we were asked as an ecosystem to move to Business Central. And so we had to layer both of those on so that we're sure that we showed up with the most up-to-date kind of technology and solutions that we could.
That perspective is interesting because it does sort of speak to how things have changed around the market and as you've sort of tried to navigate it. And let's talk a little bit more about the ecosystem from sort of a Dynamics community perspective. So obviously, again, with your years in this space, you've worked as part of a community. I think most people who have been in the space kind of think of it that way to some degree. What's your perspective on the community element of working with Dynamics products and serving Dynamics customers and service providers in the space?
I would say it's a very warm feeling to think about the community. And when you say the word community, I have just different phases just popcorning in my mind of people who I've known for years that, some of which I know pretty well. And we've sat down and shared deep things with each other. And, some of which I know as associates for a very long time, all these people that I trust and that I see over and over for, now more than 20 years. I would say, I don't know what else to say except just this feeling of warmth and trust and care.
What are some of the ways that you encourage your team to contribute to the community? And what do you maybe ask of others? Or what do you hope to see from others, maybe outside of Mekorma?
Well, on the level of contribution from us, I know that we have a couple of people on our staff that have been MVPs and that they happen to have that personal drive to give back. And certainly we're very appreciative that they put the amount of effort that they do into that community. As far as what I've seen from the community, I was very touched starting to attend the Directions Conference. So for those of you listening that don't know, Directions is actually for Business Central partners. So it's very specific. People that resell or support, like us, software for Business Central. What I didn't know until I attended was that this is completely a volunteer organization run by the partners for the partners. And that really meant a lot to me. And so I want to express my appreciation for that because having that kind of forum to work with other businesses and network, like we are all doing kind of similar things and learn about each other was really great. But similarly, like Dynamics community has been around for years and years doing the summits and Dynamics Con, now doing, super fun conferences with kind of the more Comic-Con feel to them. I mean, all of these things add fun and as well as education. And I've spoken at conferences. I appreciate the many, many people who contribute their time and energy to give these technical presentations that are just fabulous. So those are some of the things I appreciate. I probably could keep talking because there's so much to say.
One of the related things that I think of, I'd be interested to hear your view of it, is how people who started in the Dynamics GP space have sort of integrated themselves into the Business Central community. And you mentioned Directions, which is maybe a good example of that. It was like in large part two separate partner communities, partner ecosystems almost. They were sort of operating in parallel with each other, at least in North America, maybe more so than in other parts of the world. But, a company like Mekorma is a good example. Now you're really embedded there. And a lot of probably the same professionals that you've worked with over the years who have implemented, your solutions and shared, clients with you are now also sort of there. A lot of people have become Business Central experts, right? Who used to be really focused on Great Plains GP systems. Have you noticed that as well, like kind of that crossover?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the first Directions that I personally attended was last year, 2024. It was actually kind of spooky because that's when I first really took it in what you just said. I was like, oh my gosh, there's all this whole ecosystem of people doing the exact same stuff that we've been doing, except like on this other system. And it was really odd. And the other thing was feeling a little bit like odd man out, like for them, like for the people holding directions that have been there year after year, we were newcomers. That was a little interesting. But then coming up to this year when we've, last year we were in our early release program, and now we're in our, we've deployed. And so the reception's been really, really warm. And even talking to partners that are completely dedicated, never had GP, just they're on BC, but having, talking to them, and they're like, oh yeah, our customers ask us if our Mekorma can come over with them. They ask if their Mekorma could come over with them. I'm like, wow. So we're getting, it's a very warm feeling, but I also feel like, saying that, I could imagine that if someone is new and maybe they didn't come over with a bunch of clients, that's a little bit hard for them. I wonder how we could be more welcoming to newcomers, because I think it is a very well-established community. So that's one thing I could think of when I'm just talking to you.
All right, great. Yeah. Is there anything else that you're encouraging your team to do to sort of build relationships, to build partnerships within the community?
Well, the main thing is we work with our partners. We've always been, 95+% of our work goes through partners. And so that's where we focus our attention. And our whole team is now, alert to the fact that we want to build our relationships throughout the partners organization as well, meaning like it's not just, our sales team is managing a partner relationship. It's not like that. It's, a fully aligned, like our, we have sales, we have partner training, we have support, we have implementation assistance. The whole team can be aligned with the partners organization if they so desire. And we've become much more strategic that way in thinking about the relationship as a whole. And that's, I guess, what you asked was, what are we encouraging the team? It's to think about things that way, to think about the whole parallel organization and relationship that we want to build with our partners.
Yeah, I know from other Mekorma team members we've talked to that there's still a lot of product innovation going on at the company, new offerings. Is there anything else you'd maybe highlight about what you're watching, what you're planning to announce maybe in the future, or anything else that you're sort of excited about that you want to mention right now?
I would say the next phase of our development would be, besides the, just continuing to come out with enhancements to the offering we've already deployed, will be to add another offering, which is a vendor portal. And other than that, of course, I could throw out AI. We don't want to use it just as a buzzword. We're waiting to really understand what we can use it for in a way that's not superficial. And in the longer term, I think that we'll do some boutique kind of development, like probably looking at organizations that have some reason to use AP underlying and kind of put our software underneath what they're offering, stuff like that.
All right, interesting. Yeah, on the point of AI, do you think they're kind of being careful that they're not buying into something before it's really fully baked?
I certainly hope so. I think AI is wonderful and I use it every day. ChatGPT, and it's helped me in tremendous ways with like building a company brand voice. One of our team members did, and we can run our work through it. It has its place is what I'm saying. To deploy it for day-to-day work on financial stuff, I think takes a little bit more thought. So I hope that they're skeptical, because I've seen on the numbers side of it, its results can be kind of varied.
Well, Ora, thank you so much for being here today. It's really been great getting a chance to catch up and learn more about your plans and your work and what's going on at Mekorma.
I really appreciate it, Jason. Thank you so much for the offer and being able to do this podcast with you.
This has been another episode of the MSCW podcast. My thanks once again to Ora Goldman for joining me and this message from Mekorma. If you want to see how Mekorma can help your business, Reach out to Ora and their expert team today and take the first steps toward transforming your AP experience. There's a link in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.